Hello and welcome to the Our Place and First Steps Relationship Manager Briefing webinar session. As a way of introduction, I'm Jim Asprey, the Our Place and First Steps Programme Manager. Thank you for registering today, and hopefully you'll find the next couple of hours both informative and supportive to your potential relationship management role over the coming months. As you're probably aware, locality and CDF and key partners were successful in being awarded the contract to deliver Our Place and First Steps 2015-16. This was obviously fantastic news and provides us with the opportunity to build on last year's programme and continue to grow the Our Place movement. I know roughly that half of you were actively involved in delivering Our Place last year, whilst for others, especially those linked to the first step element, this will be a new experience. So welcome on board. In putting together the bid for this year's programme, which was late last year, there was the opportunity to examine what worked well last year and where there was also areas for improvement. What we did know was that the RM role was a hugely important one last year, and we didn't, in this new funding round, want to lose that dedicated face-to-face support and that sort of go-to person that areas could contact. However, we also realised that there were opportunities to improve the processes and communication with RMs or relationship managers to maximise the opportunity that this funding programme provides areas. To support this, we felt it was really important to run today's session to ensure all relationship managers have a sound understanding of the programme, its key deliverables, your role and the processes to ensure a successful programme. Last year, we didn't get the opportunity to run an RM briefing session, so we're looking to right that wrong, and hence the session we've held today. But also we had a sort of face-to-face event in Waterloo yesterday, which was well attended and went well. It was extremely hot, so but putting that aside, it was a good session. I think everyone got value from that. Before I go on to the agenda for today, I'll just run through some practicalities.
Jim?
Yeah?
Jim, could I interrupt you? Could I remind you to record this?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Before I go through to the agenda, I'll just run through some of the practicalities. There'll be two opportunities or intervals for question and answers, where Gareth will be managing that process. So any time during the presentation, then there's an opportunity for you to put a question in at any stage. If Gareth can answer that before the question and answer session, he will. Otherwise, we'll leave some of the more pertinent questions to the question and answer session, and we'll hold two of those during the next couple of hours. We'll also initiate two poll questions, which is an opportunity for you to give us a feel for how beneficial you are finding the session. To ask a question, there is a section on the right-hand side of the control panel where you can type your question. I should also add, if there are any questions that you can't answer at this session, we will address outside of the webinar and we'll get back to you. Okay, so hopefully by way of an introduction that set the scene and hopefully matches your expectations for today's session. Just to confirm, you should now be able to see the agenda on screen, which is just in front of you. Just to quickly run through it. Obviously, we've had the welcome. We'll go through the Our Place sort of story so far very briefly. We'll then look in more detail at Our Place and First Steps 2015-16, going through key deliverables. I'll firstly talk about Our Place, and then I'll hand over to my colleagues at CDF, Ian and Tom, who will talk through first steps with you. There'll then be that first opportunity for question and answers. We'll then move on to the relationship management role and lessons learned in last year's programme. And then I'll hand over to Gareth, who will talk through the RM systems and processes for 20 minutes, and then we'll have the final Q&A session. What I should add, after that final Q&A session, there will be a final poll to you, and then anyone who's solely interested in our place can then leave the session. And for those who are particularly interested or linked with first steps, Ian and Tom will have or would like to have maybe an extra 20 minutes with you just to run through some of the first steps issues in a little bit more detail. So hopefully, as a way of introduction, that's laid down what the next 2 hours will entail. I think this will generally be around a 2-hour session, and potentially longer, an extra 20 minutes or so if you're staying on for the first steps additional session at the end. Okay, just to let you know who is here today, and they'll introduce themselves as they come on to deliver the particular session. There's myself and Gareth from locality. Gareth is one of our new programme officers. Our second programme officer, Amber, is due to start tomorrow. And from CDF, there's Ian and Tom. And they'll be talking to you later, all things first steps. Also dialing in today, obviously, there's relationship managers, yourselves. Some of you will be independent consultants. Others may be from locality's demand-led team, whilst others may be from some of this year's programmes, delivery partners. For example, Community Matters, Voice for Change, UBLA, Civic Voice, and others. So hopefully that's given you a feel for who's dialed in today. Okay, looking at what is our place. Our place is it's an opportunity for local communities to it's a bottom-up approach, so it's an opportunity for organisations within a local community to engage with members of that community and identify issues or services that aren't presently fit for purpose and aren't meeting the needs of that community potentially as well as they should be, or actually just overlooking the needs of the community. So it's all about engaging with the local community, identifying where there's gaps in service provision, and looking at ways in which the community, by linking with partner organisations and particularly with local commissioners, whether that's the local authority or the local CCG, can look at transforming that service and rewiring that service to better meet the needs of the local community. So it's very much, the methodology is very much around focusing on the individual rather than the organisation within the community, and it's about providing an improved quality of service that better addresses the identified needs of that community. The background to our place is it falls under the general priority within the Department for Community and Local Government about communities in control, so the sort of localism agenda, and our place is an important theme within the wider localism agenda, and obviously it has a focus on service transformation. Initially, DCLG piloted 12 Our Place areas in 2012-2013 to see through the neighbourhood community budgets to see whether this approach to the community-led service reprovision was beneficial, not only in cost but also to the improved quality of service to the local community. Those pilots proved successful, and they are now at various stages of implementation. And if you want any further information about those pilots, then if you visit the mycommunity.org.uk website, which there'll be information on and a slide with the address on later in the presentation, then you can have a look at those pioneer and community-led organisations from 2012-2013. I should also add at this stage that we will be sending a copy of this presentation to all of you who've dialed in today. Following that, the government at the end of 2013 put out a tender to deliver a one-year programme called Our Place to support a further 100 areas, develop an operational plan for March 2015. The position we're in now is that we have 118 areas who have been working with Our Place methodology and have recently in March submitted an operational plan. Those areas are now looking to the potential of implementing the plan during this year. And throughout this year, we'll be providing regular updates to the new cohort on how the exiting cohort are progressing with the implementation of their plan. Just some quick numbers about the Our Place programme last year: 297 applications, 141 areas, 120 progressed to year 2. Of those, 55 it was thought appropriate that they do a CBA, a cost-benefit analysis, to support the operational plan. The average grant per area last year was 19,644, which is a much larger grant than will be available this year, more of which I'll talk about shortly. We also created a champions network of 100 champions. The idea of the champions network is to provide a network of key people and individuals who have a passion and a commitment for the Our Place methodology, but for localism in general, and to mobilise those people to support Our Place areas within the locality, to overcome any challenges they may face, but also to the wider audience to look to promote Our Place and neighbourhood working to key people within the locality, whether that's in local authorities, CCGs, and champion Our Place and localism. We recruited 100 last year. We delivered 20 case studies and 5 guides about community co-design, cost-benefit analysis. All of those will be available or are available on the website. So again, there'll be a resource that areas can tap into in this new programme, not only Our Place, but also First Steps. And finally, we established 11 peer learning hubs. These became operational in September, October last year in areas around England. And they're an opportunity for anyone involved in Our Place to meet on maybe a monthly or a bi-monthly basis and to talk through and share their experiences and support one another in promoting Our Place and localism within the local area. They're a key element to Our Place going forward over the next 12 months. Okay, in short, 1 in 16 of England's population now live in an Our Place area. Okay, just to let you know some of the key themes from Our Place last year. Employment outcomes was represented the largest number of Our Place areas. So that may have been, identifying young people in a housing estate who the work programme wasn't working for them. So they look at different ways of engaging the young people with local employers, offering apprenticeships, etc. Addressing social isolation by using sort of outreach or connectors was popular, particularly looking at intergenerational activity, linking the young people to help the sort of more elderly people who may be living in isolation within the community. Establishing community hubs, often multi-purpose. We had a number of libraries, for example. It's important with libraries that, when we do support them, it's not just about extending opening hours at libraries or keeping libraries open. It's more about what additional services potentially could be delivered from that library and turning those libraries into community hubs. Number on health advice and promotion, family intervention, and economic development. Okay, that's hopefully provided you with a flavour for our place and what it's achieved to date. The next section will look at the new Our Place and First Steps for this year. So firstly, we'll look at the key deliverables. We have this year to recruit 115 new Our Place areas, of which 20 should be parish councils, and the aim is to deliver a robust operational plan by March 2016. Additionally, we have to recruit 115 first step groups to deliver community action plans within the same time frame. Again, we have to look at identifying new Our Place champions, 50 Our Place and 50 first steps by the 31st of October. And also we have a requirement to deliver an additional 30 learning products. And all of this is a continuation of trying to grow the movement, make more resource available about Our Place and first steps, whilst increasing the champions network to provide more support locally to areas, and also in utilising the peer learning hubs again over the coming months. Okay, Our Place, who is it for this year? It's very similar to last year. It's about organisations based in England, incorporated organisation. They can be from the public sector and other agencies outside of the voluntary sector. For anyone in the voluntary sector, one of the key determinants is that they have to have an annual turnover of over 50,000. This is because last year, one of the lessons learned and why First Steps has been incorporated into Our Place this year is that some organisations just weren't at the stage to take full use and the opportunity available through Our Place, so they mightn't have had the internal capacity or capability to take on the challenges of putting together a robust operational plan. So First Steps was introduced to negate that, and having a sort of one indicator of a group that potentially has the resource to develop an operational plan is based on annual turnover of over 50k if you're a voluntary and community organisation. They need to have a proposed focused on a specific geographical area. That geographical area could be a ward level. It could be an area that's defined by key landmarks. So it could be an area that's divided by a highway or a major road. It could be a housing estate, or it could be at a borough level. But it is very much looking at working at a sort of neighbourhood level wherever possible. The organisation also needs to have a good track record of working in partnership. If an organisation hasn't worked in partnership previously, it's unlikely they're going to be able to meet the challenges of Our Place within this relatively short time frame of 9 or 10 months. They need to demonstrate a track record of community participation for the reasons I've just mentioned. That if they haven't engaged with the community at this stage, then again it's unlikely they're going to be able to meet all the demands of Our Place over the next few months. And obviously they need to have a commitment to work on producing an operational plan by February 16. What's the offer for areas? It's a small grant of 8,000 to help them prepare their operational plan. It's, as I said, the average grant last year was just under 20. So there is less money in the pot. That was all the monies that DCLG had available in their funding program. Relationship management support, which is for our place 4.5 days. That will be spread over the course of the program. So we'll be looking to engage relationship managers in late May, early June, and then you'd have 4.5 day support from June through to the end of February when they submit the final draft operational plan. There will be other training and support opportunities delivered by our partners. So for those who need to do cost benefit analysis, that training and support will be available, but also we'll be looking particularly at the front end to support areas with community engagement, partnership building, service co-design, and we'll be running training sessions and workshops, ideally linked to the local peer learning hub for each of the areas. Again, there'll be access to shared learning materials, and there'll be the opportunity to apply for Breaking New Ground in the summer of this year, which is an opportunity for those areas who may be proposing to do something particularly complex or innovative. They will have the opportunity to draw down some additional funds, plus also 3 days relationship management support on top of that. Finally, there's the chance to be part of a nationwide network through the peer learning hubs and also through the Champions Network. Okay, what's the ask for groups or organisations and partnerships who join this year? There'll be an induction event, 19th in York and 22nd in June. In London. There'll be a requirement for all areas in our place to produce a logic model that will be required by the 24th of July 2015 this year. So they'll have about 6 or 7 weeks to produce a logic model. The idea behind the logic model is that it provides the opportunity for areas to focus sooner rather than later on what exactly their proposal is about, what is their vision. And one of the lessons learned from last year is that if that vision can be really focused and not too broad and ambitious, then there's a greater potential for the area to produce a really robust operational plan. And going through that logic modelling exercise will give areas the opportunity to focus with their partnership on what it is their proposal is about. From that, they'll be asked to produce a draft operational plan for the 30th of October, and then there'll be a peer review process between, all throughout November, and then the final operational plan will be produced on the 19th of February. And all through this process, we'll be looking for areas to engage in the learning hubs and to engage with local champions and to actively participate in the program. So e.g., attend the induction events on the 19th and the 22nd of June. That's a very quick run through the Our Place element. What I'm going to do now is hand you over to Ian and Tom, and they are going to talk you through the first steps element. So Ian, over to you.
Hello. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Ian Beeson. I'm a Programme Manager at CDF.
My name's Tom. I'm the Programme Officer for First Steps.
So I'll just take you quickly through the background to First Steps and a few of the points about the eligibility, and then we'll pick that up again at the end of the session for just First Steps people. So as Jim said, First Steps came about because Our Place focuses on people who are already along the path in community rights, and there was obviously a lot of groups who weren't at that stage and needed support to maybe start out, and especially very small groups. We'd done some research at CDF on small community groups and what they add to local communities, and the terms you see on the screen are some of the words that came out of that research. So even though they're tiny, they may not have any income. They add a lot of value to the communities in different ways, and the volunteers bring a lot of skills with them. Some of the data we had from that research is on here, and these are very small community groups that add this as well. So yeah, so First Steps is targeted towards small community groups who are just starting out. They may have an idea about their community, and it's about giving them the skills to actually take that forward. So support, training and advice. So really important for the relationship managers to help them along that journey. Who's it for? So it's targeted to everybody in England for community groups, but particularly those under 50k, so real small community groups. And what do we ask of them? Well, it does need some commitment from them to take part in the programme with the training, with the ask of creating a community action plan. They can be unincorporated to apply for the programme, but to receive funds from us, they will need to find a partner organisation who's incorporated to hold that money for them. And as part of the assessment, areas that are suffering significant deprivation will be supported. On top of that, we're looking at the analysis of where the projects are based, because in terms of the Department for Communities and Local Government, they do want to see a spread that includes rural areas, coastal areas, not just the urban areas. So they're looking for a mix of that. So we're looking at the context of the deprivation as well. So in terms of what's the offer, it's very similar to our place. They get a relationship manager, they get 4 days worth of a relationship manager's time, they get funding towards putting together a community action plan. So what we're looking for there really is money that might be spent on eligible items linked to that. So that could be putting on a consultation event for the local community. It may be preparing a survey that will go to all households within the community. It may be paying somebody hours of their time to actually commit the community action plan to paper. So it's not something the relationship managers will have to do, but obviously the relationship managers will support them in preparing that plan. They'll get a range of training and support. There's 2 different types of that, and we'll cover that a bit later with Tom. And also they'll be joining a network so they can find out how people are addressing possibly similar issues around the country, or even completely different issues. But they'll joining that network, they'll get an idea of how people are addressing problems around the country.
Okay, so what's the ask? So what we're asking the groups to do is, firstly, we're going to want them to tell us how things are going. This will be via a short blog, which will be due in September. Also, they will need to prepare a community action plan. That will be by the end of February 2016. That will also include an initial draft in November of 2015. And we're also hoping they're going to be networking with their fellow areas at multiple events throughout the year, particularly the training events. So in terms of the timeline, as I said, 17th of September is when the blog update is due. November 23rd is when the first draft of the plan is due. A little later, we'll actually go through with you what is expected in the actual plan itself. December and January, the peer review process will take place, and then in February 2006, the final plans are due. Another key element of the programme is community champions. Joining the wider champions network, essentially they're going to act as a mentor and coach to the First Steps areas throughout the programme, and they'll also have a role in the networking events as well. So if you want to find out more information about either of the 2 programs, First Steps or Our Place, the place to go is www.mycommunity.org.uk, and everything should be on there. So I'm going to hand back to Jim now in terms of any questions.
Okay, thanks, Tom. I'll just show my screen if you bear with me a second. Okay, if everyone can hear me, Gareth, have we have any questions at all?
Yeah, Jim, we've got quite a few questions, and I'll start off with one from Keith Smithies, and that's asking if there are any plans for any events or communications that will bring participants together in the new programme.
There are. I mean, I touched on earlier the induction sessions that will be running on the 19th and the 22nd of June. 19th in York and 22nd in London. We're hoping all areas on the programme will be able to enrol and attend those sessions. We delivered the sessions last year, and they were extremely well attended, and everyone got an awful lot of information and the opportunity to sort of network early on in the programme's lifetime was really beneficial. First Steps will also have the opportunity to deliver induction events on and around the same period. Ian or Tom, I don't know if you want to just talk briefly about your induction sessions in June for First Steps.
Yes. We're going to have one in each government region, because I think being the smaller groups, the First Steps, and the fact that there may be volunteers or unpaid workers for their community groups, we don't want to have to drag them too far across the country. So we're running 9 events at the end of June. We'll be able to supply you with the dates of all those induction events, but as I say, one in each government region at the end of June.
Okay, thank you. In addition to that, Keith, we will also be running peer learning events in November, and these will probably be 2 events in different locations in the country, and that will be an opportunity for the review of draft operational plans, but also the opportunity for the review of sort of draft community action plans. And that is an opportunity where both First Steps and Our Place areas can actually network with one another. The induction events are very more focused on either Our Place or First Steps. Peer learning, that will be an opportunity for all groups to come and meet with one another and review each other's plans and operational plans. Finally, there'll be an end of programme event which will be held, I think we've even got a date in the diary, for the 23rd of March next year, and again potentially that will be an opportunity for both parties, Our Place and First Steps, to meet. In addition to that, there'll be, as we mentioned, different training opportunities to attend workshops that will be aimed specifically at First Steps and specifically at Our Place. So there'll be opportunities to network locally, and again, the peer learning hubs will support that opportunity and make available, for areas to meet with one another and look through, what the issues are locally for them. Any other questions, Gareth?
Okay. Do you want another? Yes. Relating to that, Graham Modest wants to know, will relationship managers be allocated by the time of the York/London induction days, and will relationship managers be able to attend?
Relationship managers should be should be allocated to areas by the 19th and the 22nd of June. What I forgot to mention earlier was that where we are with the current application round is that the deadline for Our Place is tomorrow, but I think because of PERDA, where we couldn't actively promote the opportunity, or organisations couldn't link effectively with local authorities during that period, means that we to date have had about 30 applications. My expectation is by the end of play tomorrow we'll probably have about 75, 80. We were actually after about 200, so we are potentially going to be extending the application deadline by a couple of weeks to the end of May. We'll make a decision on that formally on Monday of next week. So yeah, we've started the grant panel process. So from next week, we will be starting to look at allocating relationship managers with areas. But generally speaking, we'll be looking to do that in late May and the first 2 or 3 weeks in June. So my guess is by the time the events come round, the vast majority of relationship managers will be linked to the Our Place area, and likewise a similar process with First Steps. I know from the First Steps applications, they've had about 90 applications, but I know they're looking to potentially, again, extend the deadline, which was actually last Friday, by another week or so to try and double the number of applications that they currently have. Again, I think PERDA has been very influential in that. Just in respect to payment of relationship managers coming to events, unfortunately, there is a limited budget this year. So the quick answer is no. Unfortunately not. Last year's programme, we had a total budget of 4.3 million. This year's programme is 3 million. Plus, in addition to the 100 Our Place areas, we've also got 100 First Step areas. So money, as in all programmes and all organisations, money is tight. So unfortunately, as it stands at the moment, that we won't have the monies to pay for travel for relationship managers. So sorry about that.
Okay, Jim. Oh, sorry.
No, next question.
Do you want? Okay, so this is from Diana. Will Champions and their networks from last year be continuing? And in addition to that, Linda's asking, how do we know how well the learning hubs are operating?
Okay, Champions will be continuing this year. As I say, we have a commitment, and it's written into the contract to identify another 100 Champions, 50 First Place, 50 First Steps, and 50 Our Place by the end of October of this year. We currently have 100 Champions on the network. They're still on the network, and there's a lot of discussion at the moment. We have a new member of staff at CDF, Gemma, whose role is to look at promoting the different networks within localism and within the different government-funded programs, because there's Champions also being recruited across other government-funded programs. And the Champions Network actually now doesn't fall within Our Place. It now falls within the wider advice and guidance service and network that's also managed by locality. But we do have an obligation to recruit champions. They are important going forward. What I submitted to Gemma last week was a list of all the key tasks that I would like champions to assist Our Place areas in this year, because in all champions they should give 2 days of their time to promoting localism and Our Place and First Steps over the coming months. So, for example, they can assist with Our Place and First Steps in reviewing draft operational plans or community action plans, in troubleshooting if there's any issues within a local area, then maybe about partnership building, or they can't get access to key people at the local authority. It may be in assessing or doing peer review, attending events and supporting in workshops. So we're trying to get the ask for champions a lot more better clarified for this year going forward, and there's a lot of discussion at the moment within DCLG and also within locality and partners as to how to best to continue to engage champions over the coming months, because it's not only about supporting the areas who are on the programme, it's also looking to champions to look outwards and start making noise locally with local commissioners, local authorities, and just promoting localism and trying to keep it high on the agenda within local areas. Is there any other questions, Gareth?
Hey Jim, I've got another. Yeah, I've got a couple more relating to the peer networks and what resources are available to champions and are we just relying on people's goodwill? And are the peer networks themed or arranged geographically?
The champions, we are really, I mean, champions aren't paid. Travel expenses are paid for champions, and any expenses they incur in supporting areas and championing localism, but there is no we don't pay a day rate. I say the champions, there's a big discussion about whether we should make it mandatory for areas to nominate champions when they enrol onto the programme, and we feel that isn't the best approach, because we want champions to join because they have the passion and the commitment, and we don't want them to feel that they're being coerced. And if they do, I say we ask if they have 2 days of their time to support the programme in some way, shape, or form over the coming months. And ideally, any support they do offer would be local to them. So hopefully I've answered that question. With respect to the learning hubs, we currently have, I think there's 11 peer learning hubs. I said they're established in September, October. They are of each of them has differing momentum. Some of them are quite robust and are making good progress. Others have needed a bit more hand-holding or support to try and get that momentum going locally for different reasons. So we do have champions linked up to the peer learning hubs, and we will make the list of peer learning hubs available on the website. Again, at the moment, as there is with champions, there's a lot of discussion around peer learning hubs because they are important, particularly for our place this year, that we are looking to those that are lacking momentum to get the momentum and to link them up with champions and keep people locally. We're looking to deliver some of our training and workshops via the peer learning hubs. So obviously the peer learning hubs would be funded if they had to for accommodation and any sort of expenses around delivering the workshops. And we thought that would be a better attraction locally if we could offer more workshops at a local level rather than at a national level. Any others, Gary?
Okay, I've got 2 questions now for first. Yeah, this is for Ian and Tom at CDF regarding First Steps. First question is, how many First Steps applications came in by the deadline? And the second question is, do First Steps groups need to be for very local areas, e.g. wards, as well as being for small groups in financial terms? And does this exclude small groups who cover larger areas, such as an umbrella group for other groups? For example, would a Park Friends group forum be eligible for First Steps?
Okay, thanks for those. The first question. So in terms of the drawing down the application forms, we had 230 groups who drew down the application form, and so far just under 100 of those have submitted. So the deadline for that was last week, but we're working with some of those groups, some of whom had logging on issues to submit their applications. So we're hopeful that we're going to get another batch within the next week, I'd say, really. So that'll hopefully take us over the number we need for the applications. In terms of the second question about the areas, thanks for that question. I suppose there is an expectation on our part that there may be smaller areas that these community groups are covering, possibly on a ward basis, possibly on a local neighbourhood or an estate, things like that. I don't think it would rule out bigger groups, possibly if they had a theme while they're working across a larger area. The application form that they have ask them to describe the community they're working in, the area in which they deliver. So there is an opportunity to go wider, but I think it's fair to say our expectation is not many of the applications would do that, and probably a lot of them would be on a ward level or similar. As I say, if they did have a thematic background, then potentially they might work over a larger area.
Okay, I've got just hold on. Yeah, I've got a question about. I've got a question about operation plans, and it's regarding this. Sorry, hold on. Yeah, can you explain, please, when the final plans are submitted, who signs them off, and do they retain any special status within CLG? Are there the dates for this? And could this be explained as part of the process to groups on the programme?
Yeah, I mean there is sign off from DCLG as there is from this year. We need to have discussions with DCLG over the next couple of weeks about exactly what the signing off process will be and what rigor will be used in signing off those operational plans. We've had one or two issues this year with the sign off of operational plans. Well, with some plans not being signed off by DCLG and then having to go back to the area for revision or clarification. So it's turned into a more elongated process than we would have hoped for, and there's definite lessons learned in relation to the signing off process for next year. Where we are in relation to timelines is I mentioned earlier that the draft operational plan should be submitted by the 30th of October. There'll be peer review immediately after that process, and then there'll be submission of a final operational plan on the 19th of February. But then from the 19th of February to the 31st of March, that will be the period for sign off by DCLG. With respect to lessons learned about the operational plans, there was obviously guidance last year for the operational plans, as there will be for this year, but we will make crystal clear, and it will continue to reinforce the key themes that we're looking to be addressed, the key sections in each operational plan, and we'll be looking for relationship managers to make sure that they understand and keep repeating exactly what we're looking for in an operational plan. So it's vision. Areas need to have a really clear vision of what they're trying to achieve. Keep it simple. Many areas are over ambitious. They're extremely motivated to make change, but they're sometimes too ambitious within this relatively short time scale. So rather than have multiple themes, it's try and focus in on one or two. And as I said, the logic models will support that process. It's also important to make sure that there's a strong partnership. So making sure you get the local commissioners on board at the earliest opportunity. Making sure that there is a robust business case in relation to service transformation. How would the service be different if you were delivering it or supporting delivery of the service from the 1st of April next year? Where does the transformation bit come in? How have the community been engaged? What was the community engagement prior to the operational plan? But also, what plans do they have for community engagement whilst they're also implementing and delivering the service next year? There's a clear business case. They have to look at what budget they have, what opportunities there are to pool budgets. If they have to do a CBA, that has to be delivered in the new economy spreadsheet. We asked them to all be crystal clear about what resources they need to deliver the proposal next year, not in delivering the operational plan, but actually in delivering the service they want to rewire from the 1st of April next year. And finally, to look at what the implementation plan would be. So I say there's 6 or 7 key areas that we're looking for in an operational plan, and some of the really good operational plans we've had this year have actually been quite brief. Many areas probably put in too much information. Sometimes that's because they haven't got the clear focus on what it is they're trying to achieve, and they are being over ambitious. So when it comes to writing the operational plan, they have more difficulty in doing that. Okay, Gareth.
Okay, then there's a question here for first steps for Tom and Ian. The timescales seem very short for producing the plans, and how were these set? How were these timescales set, and what happens if the first steps organisations find they can't meet them? Is there any flexibility if it takes longer for communities to consult and discuss what their priorities are?
It is very tight. You're absolutely right. Being a one-year program, we don't have a lot of flexibility in that, to be honest. Essentially, between getting them on board and them inducted at the end of June, they'll have until November to do that consultation. So yeah, it will be challenging, and hopefully, possibly when the relationship managers meet them for the first time, they can sort of drum in that message to them. I don't think we will have any flexibility because we will need to get it all delivered within that year. So I don't think there is any flexibility there.
Okay, thank you. And I've got a couple of questions now, general questions about applications for both programs. How are the applications assessed, and can people who missed the boat apply during the next weeks, or are we going to go with just those who made contact by the deadlines for both programs?
Okay, for our place, there's quite a rigorous assessment process in place. So when we receive an application online, it's given an initial screening for due diligence, and then it's automatically sent to one of our, we have, I think it's 12 to 15 assessors. They have 2 to 3 days to assess the application. There's key criteria in that assessment. So we are looking at, there's 8 key criteria. One is, for example, what is their grasp of our place? There's a section in the application form that wants to identify, with respect to our place, how their proposal fits with the our place sort of methodology. We think that's quite important. They're rated on the strength of the partnership. Do they have key partners around the table? They're rated on the level of community engagement that they've done and the engagement they've got planned over the coming months. They're rated on how realistic and achievable the proposal appears to be in relation to the capacity in the partnership and the resource. They're rated on the budget breakdown and how reasonable their costs appear to be and appropriate their costs appear to be. And they're also rated on how complex or not the proposal is. We know if we fund 100 programs, there'll be some that are more complex and there'll be others that are a lot more straightforward and simple. They're also rated on the nature of the area, so not only on the area of deprivation, but also are there any other key determinants about the area that suggest this would be a good fit for our place. And then they're scored 1 to 5. The application comes to panel, and DCLG are present with key people from locality and the assessor, and we review the application, and there's a yes or a no. If we feel the application has potential, then we can go back to the applicant and ask for additional information. So they don't resend their application, they provide us by email with additional information that we've asked, and then that assessment goes back to panel. So that's the process. We believe it's fit for purpose, and we did that process last year. We've tweaked it slightly for this year, but it's by and large very much the same process. I mean, I don't know, Ian, if you wanted to talk about the process for first steps.
Hi, Tom here. So it's very similar to our place. Essentially, we have a pool of about 8 internal assessors. As the applications come in, we do a due diligence check. The 8 internal assessors will assess the application, and then it's essentially put into a pool which will go forward to DCLG to do the final sign-off. It's looking like that is going to be on the 19th, so Tuesday next week. In terms of the assessment criteria, we are scoring them 1 to 5 on about 9 different questions. A little later during the breakout, we're going to go into a bit more detail in terms of what we did ask of the applicants and what information will actually be put forward to the RMs. So we'll go through that a little bit later.
Okay, I think that.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Just going to say the other bit of the question about are we looking? Initially, we're looking to work with those people who drew down the forms, and we'll see where that takes us in terms of whether there's enough to work on the program from that. And if not, we might need to take stock and consider new applications. But at the moment, it's those groups who've drawn down the application form.
Jim, could I ask one last question?
Yeah. Okay.
And it's a composite question, so it's about learning from last year. Have we learned? What have we learned from last year, and will this mean we'll be doing things different this year? And particularly relating to the operational plans, could some of them from last year be used as examples for this year's areas?
They will be. Yeah, we've got some exemplar logic models. We've got some exemplar operational plans and CBAs. So all of those will be a resource for areas as and when they come on the program, but also for relationship managers as well. We'll forward those on to you, so you have a really good feel of what a good operational plan looks like, and what a good CBA and logic model looks like. With respect to the other question, we'll probably tackle that when we look at lessons learned shortly. So if we can now, if it's okay, Gareth, to now move on to the role of the relationship manager.
Yep.
And then I say there is.
Before we do that, can I just?
All right. Sorry.
Before we go on to that, can I just say that we've had about 40 questions, so obviously we haven't been able to answer all of them, but we will go away and send a response to every single answer. Thank you.
Excellent. Okay. Thank you. Well, moving swiftly on. Okay, we'll talk briefly about the role of the relationship manager. Now, I know from the list of participants that many of you were in this role last year, and I'm sure others have provided a relationship management role in other programs. So none of this is rocket science or should be left field to any of you. I say we're quite limited in the number of days. Last year we had 7 or 8 days RM support. This year, for the reasons we've explained, we're down to about 4 or 4.5 for our place. The role of the relationship manager, it's to be that critical friend. It's to advise and guide. It's to motivate the areas. And importantly, it's to report progress to CDF and to locality. And Gareth will talk shortly about the reporting and process that has been improved. You'll be glad to know from last year. And we also want relationship managers to be committed to our place and to first steps. And to sort of go out there and to sell it to the areas. We realise that we have a requirement centrally, locality and CDF, to make sure you have the necessary know-how and the information in order for you to do that. And obviously today's session is the start of that process. And it's going to be limited in what you can do for 4 or 4.5 days. We appreciate that. When Gareth talks through the reports, we've got reports at key stages, but we'll be able to generate a lot more meaningful data from your reports this year via Salesforce. So that's the sort of role of the RM. The couple of points is don't do the work for them. It is around support and not delivery. I know a number of RMs last year were being sort of dragged in willingly or unwillingly into actually doing quite a lot of spade work around the production of operational plans. Obviously, it's about helping them to do it, and obviously the onus is on us centrally to make sure that we give them the necessary tools and support in order for them to do that. And lastly, it's about keeping them on track. And I appreciate that's easier done than said when you're only with them for 4 or 4.5 days. But this year we've removed some of the process from last year. We're going to have a clearer focus. So I think we are setting things in place to make sure that we will learn from lessons learned from last year. Okay. If anyone, there's another question and answer session later. So if anyone does have any further questions about RM, then feel free to answer or to ask the question in for the next session and forward it on to Gareth. We're going to move on now to the first poll question. So Gareth, if you can get ready to launch the poll. This is an opportunity for you to just feed back to us your immediate feedback about the clarity in the aims of the programme and the relationship manager's role. And you've got 5 opportunities to click and provide the one that is you feel is most appropriate. Obviously, from the feedback from today and yesterday, if the role is unclear for one reason or another, then we'll look to address that over the coming weeks, particularly before you start engaging with your area. Are you in a position to launch that poll, Gareth?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Okay, so the results are coming in. It's looking positive, so it suggests that there's been some benefit for the last hour or so. I think everyone's probably voted now. So if you can just close the poll, Gareth. Okay, and can you just show that on screen? Share that.
There it is. Okay.
So what we have is, fortunately, 60% of you are clear and 27% are very clear, with probably 13%. A couple of you think it's too early to say. As I said, if there's any queries after this, then by all means contact the Our Place team at the Our Place at locality.org.uk, and similarly with First Steps, and we'll look to clarify any questions that you may have. Okay, so thank you for that poll. What we'll do now is just move on to very briefly talk about the lessons learned from last year. I think there is an acknowledgement from myself and the Our Place team that there needs to be improved communication between relationship managers and locality. We were slightly overwhelmed at times last year with the volume of work that Our Place entailed, and the management of communication between 140 areas, 40 relationship managers, and DCLG, and numerous consultants and partners. We got a lot of it right, but there was room for improvement. So we'll be looking to improve those communications. I think the reporting that Gareth will talk about shortly will greatly assist that. We'll also make sure that relationship managers are routinely copied into any correspondence with areas. We're also looking to make sure that any correspondence we have with areas and also with yourselves as relationship managers will be via the Our Place email. So you won't be getting emails from different members of the team, because I know that was an issue when trying to locate key facts. We'll also at all times update you with the key timeline for activity, so you know the dates that we're working to, and you're clearly kept in the picture from start to end. I talked about improving the reporting mechanism, and also I think we have an obligation to making sure that areas fully understand the role of the relationship manager. So we'll be sending out some information to areas when they enroll to say, okay, this is your relationship manager and this is their role when you engage with them over the coming weeks and months. More general lessons learned, we're looking to reduce the process. It was very process driven last year. So there's no, in inverted commas, year 2, where they have to reapply 3 or 4 months into the program. There's no requirement to produce a development strategy at the halfway stage in addition to a logic model. Now we're just looking at the logic model to be delivered earlier rather than later, and that will hopefully provide that focus for areas to go on and establish those relationships and put together a really good operational plan. And again, that's just highlighted in the last point. It's getting that focus from areas. That's one of the key lessons learned, and it's getting effective partnerships in place sooner rather than later. So yeah, they're the general comments about lessons learned. Okay, I think what I'm going to do now is hand you over to Gareth, who's going to quickly talk you through the relationship management systems and processes.
Yep, that's right. Yes, so my name's Gareth. I've taken over from Kobe. Those of you who know who Kobe is, I'm the program officer, and in our team we've got Anna and Amber, who's a new program officer starting next week. Specifically, I'll be responsible for the operational side of our Place program. In practice, that means I'll be supporting our Place program areas with strategic and logistic aspects of the program. I'll also be linking with relationship managers in respect of procedural matters, such as issuing contracts, allocating areas, helping you form links with the areas, and I'll be the first point of contact in respect of reports, invoices, and anything that's troubling you or anything that you need to know about your area. I'm going to be giving you a general overview of the systems and processes we're going to be using this year, and that will include contracts, how they're issued, reporting, how that's managed, and how we're expecting you to manage invoicing. Locality operates. We employ a customer relationship management system called Salesforce. We will be expecting relationship managers to interact with our Place, with locality and with First Ups through Salesforce, particularly for particular aspects of the program. And as I said earlier on, all contracts, reports, invoicing, and other standard correspondence will be conducted through our customer relationship management system. So things like logic models, draft operational plans, cost-benefit analysis, community plans, and so forth will be monitored through through Salesforce, and that will give us an enormous amount of information over how the program is running, statistical information, and things like every report we'll be sending will ask you to identify things like training needs. That will give us some rich data on what type of training is needed by which areas. We'll be able to track the progress around say development of logic models, development of operational plans, and I think most importantly we'll be introducing a RAG rating system for each area. and I'll talk about that a little bit later on. So Jim, could you change the slide, please? So we'll be issuing two types of contracts. The first is an individual contract. That's for sole traders, and the contract will be between you and locality or CDF, and you'll have a contract for each Our Place or First Step area you are a relationship manager with. So if you're allocated 2 areas, you'll have a contract for each of those areas. The second type of contract will be with our delivery partners, so organisations like the Local Government Association, NALC and so forth. The contract will be with the organisation and not with individual relationship managers from that organisation. The contract will contain a standard set of clauses including general conduct, legal and contractual arrangements and so on, and then it will also contain a schedule of works which will contain detailed information about what we're expecting you to deliver about with your particular area. Things like an agreed day rate, who your CDF locality nominated officer is, your details, terms of the contract, payment schedule, and any special conditions if there's any variances with any of the areas. Next, I want to move on to the reporting, and both First Steps and Our Place will have 4 reporting stages. For Our Place, these are already established, whereas with First Steps, those are yet to be established. That's being set up on our content management system, customer management CRM system already, and I think Ian and Tom will have more information about that as we progress. About the reports, you will be sent an email alert containing a link to the report, and you will need to complete an online report that will be fed straight into into Salesforce. This will be sent out well in advance of you actually expecting to be reporting, so a month or 2 months even before you're expected to be reporting. And the dates for Our Place that are specified are the due dates, where though if you do want to submit your report before those dates, that's quite acceptable, and that will be really helpful for us actually. If you've done the work, we'd really like you to submit your report as soon as possible after that, and this will help us to help you with any problems you have with the areas. It'll give us an immediate overview of how that particular area is doing, and you'll get paid sooner as well, because when I talk about invoicing, it is linked to the reporting. Jim, could you move to the next slide? About the reports, each report will contain up to 25 questions. It's a combination of drop-down boxes, giving us a quick overview, and a narrative with with a 200-word limit. Again, the reports, we want them to be as light a touch as possible, so we don't have to be reading through a lot of information. It's just an overview of how you're doing. If there are particular issues with a particular area, then there's other ways of corresponding with us to help us sort that out. So the report is just as good an overview as possible within the sort of word limit and so on. And as I said, we will be introducing the red, amber, green, a RAG rating system, the traffic light system. So for each time you submit a report, at the very end there will be an overall impression of how your area is doing, and we need you to be very honest about this, marking it red, amber, green, and that will help us anticipate any issues that might be coming up for areas, and help us, your judgment is really, really important on this, because it's your relationship with the area will be the key for us sort of gathering intelligence about how well that area is doing. Just to say that each report, we're hoping that when your report is sent to you, that your name, your organisation's name, the reference number for the area, and the area name will already be on that report. So we're hoping that, the Salesforce system is sophisticated enough to complete that information, so you don't have to be repeating that information every time you fill in the report. Okay, and want to talk about invoicing. This is to help us set up a system that works for Our Place and works for you. We are asking you to attach an invoice to every report, and that's one invoice per reporting stage for multiple areas. So if you're for reporting stage 1, if you're working with 4 different areas, we would expect you to submit 4 different invoices. Each invoice is expected to contain a unique reference number for that stage and for that area. And the report will already contain the reference number and the area name as defined by locality. And this is to really help us out in locality and help CDF as well. We want to take a standard approach to invoicing and managing the reports. We learned from last year a number of areas were known by a number of different names, for example, which caused a huge amount of confusion. Invoices were sent in at irregular stages, and some were sent in completely with the most limited information on it. It was very difficult for us to produce an audit trail back to the work that the relationship managers are doing, and it just meant that a lot of time was unnecessarily spent communicating with that relationship manager, trying to establish the work that was the work associated with that invoice. There were duplication invoices sent in, and it caused a great deal of unnecessary administration for both relationship managers and for locality. And just to say that you can only, for the invoicing, we want you to, sorry Jim, can you go to the next slide? So I need to explain I don't have access to PowerPoint on the laptop I'm using, which is why Jim is moving the slides on for me. So the invoices, we want them to be submitted only with the report. The report will expect you to upload an invoice, and you won't be able to submit your report without an invoice. And for first steps, your 4 days as a relationship manager, we're expecting 4 invoices of up to £400 per day. And for our place, there's 4.5 days for relationship managers. So there'll be 3 invoices up to £400 and 1 invoice up to £600 for the day and a half. We're only accepting invoices at single day units. So again, last year we found that people were sending in invoices for 2 hours work, an hour's work, and it became very difficult for us to manage. And any, we do accept that are going to be some exceptions to this, but as a general rule, last year we found that most areas had 4 days that were quite 4 days delivered over the period of the Our Place program, and so we feel that it's fair to ask relationship managers to submit at regular intervals with a set amount of expenditure. But if there are going to be any exceptions, we will need to agree those. Those will need to be agreed with the locality or with CDF. Okay, and I think that's more or less it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Gareth. Can I just reinforce that areas only have 4 days or 4.5 days support. So in essence, each report you'll be delivering after a day's activity. So that first day's activity will be the early impressions you get of that group, their capacity and their capability to, in your opinion, to deliver at this stage, at the early stage, an operational plan. So the questions, and I think the overall reports will only take 15 or 20 minutes to complete. As Gareth said, there's lots of drop-down menus, etc., and click boxes. The second report will be at an interval, maybe after they've just submitted the logic model, and it will be about the early stages of them putting together an operational plan. The third report will be linked to the draft operational plan, so that will be expected just after the 30th of October. And then the fourth one is towards the end of the program's lifetime, so a sort of end of January. So because you're only delivering for 4.5 days support, we thought that was a good way to structure the reporting. So I suppose what we don't want to happen is you in week 1 go in and deliver 4 days support, because that will mean potentially for the rest of the program there'll be no RM support available to them. So there is that in your role, that discipline that you are only getting paid for 4.5 days, and ideally those days should be, where possible, equally distributed during the duration of the program. Okay, thank you. I think we're just about to go into a final poll. So, Gareth, if you just want to launch the poll. Yeah, and this is about how useful you've found today's session in starting to prepare you for your relationship management role. And again, you've got 5 options, and this will just give us a feel for what additional work we need to do with you between now and when you start to be allocated areas going forward. Okay, so poll in progress. 29 of you found it very useful, 29%. 61 have found it useful. 10 too early to say. It looks as if we have Hello, can you hear me? Hello, can people hear me?
Hello, I think a number of people have had, yeah, I think, Jim, I'm getting a lot of messages through the questions that a lot of people's systems seem to have gone down and people have lost sound.
All right, hopefully.
I believe people are back online now.
Yeah, because I lost mine also.
Yeah, I lost mine also as well.
All right. Okay, it looks as if there was a glitch that for some reason, and we temporarily lost we lost the audio facility.
Yeah.
So, but it looks like we're okay. Thank you. It looks like we're now back online. So, just regarding the polls, I think we were just about to close them. And yeah, I mean, looking at the poll results, 29% found it very useful, 61% found it useful. So thank you. I think that's quite encouraging. So that's excellent. What we'll do now, before we sort of sign off, is just see whether or not there's any final questions before we hand over to Ian and Tom, just to go through any final conversations around first steps. But before Gareth and I sign off, are there any other questions, Gareth?
Yes, just a question about can we send some example reports out in hard copies? And yes, that's absolutely fine. We can do that.
Yeah.
There's one question whether there could be a closed Facebook for areas and relationship managers.
Yes, we'll have to look at that. I believe there is a group on LinkedIn for relationship managers, and obviously we have the Just Act discussion forum. But we have a member of staff starting tomorrow, Amber, who will be taking the responsibility for the sort of communications within our place. So one of her first tasks will be to clarify and gain momentum to any existing groups that we already have. And I know there is one that's used by a number of relationship managers on LinkedIn, but we'll confirm that and send the link, and we'll let you know of any other forums or opportunities there are for yourselves and areas to have discussions online.
Okay, there are a couple of questions regarding the invoicing process.
Yep.
So I think it's probably best if we answer those individually after the webinar.
Okay.
But I've got a question here for Ian and Tom. Do you know the geographical spread of applications for First Steps so far?
Yes, we've got a slide for it, so I can show people that a little bit later on the First Steppers.
Somebody wants to know what's covered in the due diligence check, and will this be covered in the breakout session?
Due diligence, it's just making sure the obviously the organisation is bona fide, and the actual responsibility for carrying out due diligence will be with they're not our partner. They won a separate contract with DCLG to manage all of the grants across all of the different programs, and that's Groundwork UK. So they will be managing and monitoring the grant process. When we've made we've agreed to fund an area, we will then send a notification to Groundwork, and they will start to do a due diligence. That involves looking at accounts, and the last annual accounts that were returned, etc.
We do a little bit on First Steps before we start the assessment, and that's basically, if groups have said they're incorporated, we just check online before we give it out to the assessors and check their details.
Okay, Jim, I've got a question before you go about cost-benefit analysis, and how will it be? How is it determined who has to submit a cost-benefit analysis?
Okay, the logic modelling process that we're asking groups to undertake, when they submit that on the 24th of July, there will be a panel of economists, for want of a better expression, and they will review each of the each of the logic models, and they will make a judgment as to whether they think it's appropriate and proportional for that area, based on the information in the logic model, to go ahead and start the CBA process. So the logic model is pivotal not only in providing focus for areas, but in supporting DCLG and partners make an informed decision as to whether CBA would be appropriate. What we don't want, because we know there is a nervousness about CBA with a number of areas, and what we don't want is to send areas down the CBA route unless there's real benefit in doing that. So it's the logic modelling process that determines what's required for CBA. So in early August, we will know which areas need to do CBA. You'll be notified as relationship managers whether your area has to do a CBA or not. And then the CBA support will start kicking in from September onwards with a variety of different methods of supporting areas with the CBA. it will be delivered again by New Economy. The New Economy spreadsheet is the sort of gold standard within the government treasury department. So there will be further guidance on how to deliver that CBA going forward for those groups who need to. Any other questions, Gareth?
That's more or less all of the questions are. No, I don't think there are.
Okay.
Some of them are very specific to the invoicing process, and yeah.
Okay. Well, as I'm going to dial out now, as are some of you who won't be actively involved with First Steps. So if I can just take this opportunity to thank you for making the time today in your busy diaries to dial in. It's hugely appreciated, and hopefully, as I said, you've found the session useful. What I'll do now, my last act, is to change the presenter. So I'll make you the presenter, Ian, and I will sign off. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Hello to all the First Steppers. Thank you for sitting through the presentation so far. We thought it'd be useful for you to get the picture, or the bigger picture, including our place as well. But because First Steps is a new element, we thought it'd be quite useful to take a bit of time just to revisit some of the points you mentioned earlier and just give you an idea of the First Steps element in a bit more detail. So myself and Tom will take you through that. We'll try not to keep you too long, but we do want to give you a bit more information. I think Gareth is hanging on, so we can maybe answer some questions as well at the end.
Yeah, yes, so, I'm here. So any questions, please feel free to submit them.
Great.
Okay.
Okay.
At the end.
Firstly, I just want to point you to our unofficial logo of the feet. We really like that, so we're going to stick it on all our presentations. Okay, so these are the steps, the slides you saw earlier. The point to make here is that the groups are really small, incorporated or unincorporated community groups, and that's reflected in the application form and in the outputs that they need to complete. Our place has quite a lot of detail. It asks large organisations to complete a lot of detail. The cost-benefit analysis you heard of the logic model, that's not part of First Steps. First Steps is looking at small groups coming together, identifying an issue that they want to address, and at the end of the year producing a community action plan. We'll talk about the community action plan a bit later on, but it's not expected to be a huge statistical driven piece of work, but rather a small commentary on what they've set out to do. So in terms of the application form, what we're asking the community groups to fill in on the application form is literally say who they are, how do they fit into their local communities, how do they describe the local area, does it suffer from deprivation, what is the issue they'd like to address, and how would they use the money to create a community action plan. So very light touch. And so in terms of our assessments, there's not a lot to go on. So, I mean, I think we're being asked in terms of the assessment to look at potential with a lot of these areas rather than how far down the road they are. And that's certainly true of the assessments we've had so far. So we've had projects who eligible areas, eligible groups that have good partnership working already in their local communities will possibly fell over when it came to what they want to spend their budget on. As I say, the budget is focused on the community action plan, but some of them wanted to spend other areas. So there may be, so in terms of our assessment, there's groups that are already great to go ahead. There's a few other areas where they probably can go ahead if they just amend their budget slightly. So as I say, we're looking for potential, and I think that's hopefully how the relationship managers will see it when they start working with the groups. It's potential, but they need sort of shepherding in the right direction. We've covered these slides before. The timeline we touched on briefly before. There's a little more detail here. So in terms of the groups, so end of May is when we're looking to notify the areas. We've got our first meeting with DCRG next week, and hopefully we can identify a good percentage of the First Steps areas then. So we've had 100 applications, or just under so far, and as I say, we're working with others, so it's likely that we'll have another meeting with DCLG after next week. So we'll be notifying areas, I guess, late May and maybe into early June. Once we start identifying the areas, we can start slotting in the relationship managers. All the people who've written in declaring an interest, we've tried to, in the first instance, put them closest to the areas where they're based, obviously for their local knowledge when they come to work with these groups. Some relationship managers have identified that they can work further afield, and that's great. So part of the post-decision making exercise has been working out where we slot people into. I'll go through what coverage we've had so far. At the end of June, we've got I think it's just over 2 weeks worth of induction events for each of the government regions. We'll give you those dates. You're more than welcome to attend if you're able to, or if you're in the local areas. I guess the briefing for those people for the First Steps areas will be along the lines of this. There's certainly an amount of guidance that we'd have to produce for those areas, and obviously we try and submit that to you for those events as well. So whatever we produce for them, you'll see a copy of. We've got quite an active and intensive training program for these groups. One of the things that I think, again, one of the asks for the relationship managers is when they meet these areas is to ensure that there's commitment from a number of different people within their communities. It's really intensive. It's an intense year, and I think if there's one person trying to do all this, they'll really struggle. So hopefully as part of your meeting with the groups, you can identify 3, 4 or more people that might be able to take part. We're running a number of training sessions. Tom will give you a breakdown on those a bit later on, but it really needs more than one person if they can get the most out of the programme. So as we mentioned earlier, the first thing they'll submit is a blog. It won't be something they have to directly post. They'll just create a Word document and they'll submit it to us, and then it'll be posted as a blog. That essentially would be them saying who they are, what's the issue in their local communities, and where they've got to by September. Now, given the timescales, they probably won't have done that much, but it's just setting the scene of where they're getting. And again, the idea of the blog is that other people around the country can see how other people are doing and probably, hopefully, be reassured. They're asked to submit their draft plan by November so that we can do a peer review process in December and January. Our place ran the peer review process last year, and I think partly that was on a large event. It may not be appropriate to do the same for First Steps area, and it may be something we do on a local basis with areas, whether that's an event or whether that's sort of electronically. We need to still decide that. The final plan is due in February, so that can be signed off in the next month before the celebration event. So again, First Steps relationship manager will hopefully be helping those people prior to the February deadline to get those plans in. There's discussions in the general briefing a bit earlier about when the events might take place. This is it's nothing we're imposing on relationship managers, but these are our ideas when people might want to do it. So relationship managers should hopefully know in June who their areas are. We would hope that they'd be able to get a meeting in before, say, mid-July, before the summer holidays, just to set the scene with those groups and start the groups out. We're assuming they may want to meet again before the 17th of September, before that piece of work on the blog is done. Or it may not be the case, but we think that might be where the next one is. Obviously, they're going to need support prior to getting their draft version of the action plan together. They may be more nervous about submitting the draft version because that's the first time it'll be going to external groups. So we imagine the relationship managers want to spend some time before that date. And again, we're assuming that the final date that the relationship managers will want to work will be prior to the submission of the final plan. Now, obviously, every relationship manager's time will be different. The availability of the groups will be different, but we see roughly that as being the spread of the groups. So what specific support do we think they need? So obviously, especially with that first meeting, to clarify with them the issue they want to address. Identify, of all the training that we're providing, what they think is the most useful to that particular group. Looking at the budget for the plan, is there anything that the assessor thought is ineligible, or anything the relationship managers think, could be spent slightly differently? And then helping them plan how they will do the plan or plan the plan. What will the relationship managers need to know? Well, essentially, as part of the briefing for you, you'll receive the application information from the group, so what they want to set out to do, who they are. On top of that, you'll have the comments from the assessors and also from DCLG at the panel meetings. So they may want to support it, but there may be a caveat in terms of the budgets or things like that, so you'll be made available of that information. And obviously, one of the things we can also show you is the training provision, and Tom, a bit later, is going to do that. And we've also got a handout we can send you, which is a rough outline of the trainings being offered. So I'm going to pass you over to Tom now, and he can take you through the training offer.
Okay, so I'm going to take you guys through the training off of first steps areas. So basically, there's two separate types of training available that areas can access. So there's community development training. Essentially, this is 5 topics. All 5 topics will be delivered in all 9 government regions. And then alongside this is also going to be leadership training. I'll go into both in more detail in a moment. We're hoping that the groups will access 3 of the 5 community development training events and 1 of the 2 leadership events. So 4 training events altogether. So in terms of the community development training, these are the 5 topics that we have. So what is my neighbourhood like? That's essentially a practical guide to understanding and mapping your neighbourhood, exploring the political and economic context of the area. Listening to your community, so that's how to run a public consultation event or perhaps a survey. Telling your story is all about communications and social media. Problem solving and working through difficult issues, so that could include project management, governance, decision making, conflict resolution, and then working together, which is essentially best practice for collaborations between communities and public bodies. So as I said, every session will be delivered in the 9 government regions. The materials are being developed centrally for consistent content. One of the things we're really keen to ensure is that there's no kind of crossover or repetition of content. So we also have a handout, which we handed out yesterday at the face-to-face RM induction. I'm just going to show you a copy now. Okay, so I'm going to email this to all of you following the webinar, but for now I'll just show you briefly what the document will look like. It's an overview of both types of training, the suite of 5 topics, and also the leadership training as well. And it breaks down each of the 5 topics into the kind of things that will be delivered within them. Okay, so the leadership training is going to be delivered by the Eden Project and COCO. So the Eden Project is delivering on community activism, and COCO delivering on community organising. So for the Eden Project, it's essentially going to be helping people to take action and run projects in the community to bring about positive change. They're looking to run 3 sessions in September and October. So there's going to be 1 in the north, 1 in the Midlands, and 1 in the south. COCO, again, 3 sessions will be run in September, October, in the north, the Midlands, and the south. As part of the COCO offer, there's also a residential event, which is looking like it's going to be in early November. So I'm just going to take you through the community action plan now. These are the key dates that we went through earlier. It needs to be a first draft by the 23rd of November. The peer review process will take place in December, and the final version needs to be submitted by February 2016. So what should the plan look like, and what does it need to tell us? Basically, a good summary would be the plan will need to look at how the community firstly thought about the area or issue that they identified, and also what outcomes the community would like to achieve. We'd also expect that it will contain actions about what will happen in the short, medium and long term, and it would also be good if the group can identify or at least have an idea of when the key actions need to happen, and potentially who's going to deliver them and who the key partners will be. Again, this is just an overview of the key points that need to be included in the plan. So what were the results of the initial consultation they did? What actions need to be taken? What are the ideal outcomes? What are the timescales going to be? Who is involved? Who's going to lead on it? What are the issues that they are currently facing? Who can they look to for support and help? And how they're involving the community. So one of the questions earlier asked what is the current status in terms of the spread of applications. So you can see it here. The majority of applications, as you can probably expect, are coming from the London region, and the second highest is coming from the northwest. The regions that we're hoping to get a few more applications for is the eastern region and the southeast. As of today, we've had 98 applications, and about 230 people have requested the form. We're doing one last push to get more applications in by Monday, and our initial indication is we should be able to move past the 115 mark. And decisions will be made on Tuesday, and groups will probably find out the outcome the week after that. Once we know the spread of groups, then we're thinking probably the first 2 weeks of June is when we'll be able to let the RMs know which groups they'll be working with. Okay, I'm just going to hand over to Ian now, who will talk you through the reporting process for first steps.
Off mute, which will help. Okay, so the reporting. There's a few points just from those last slides that I just wanted to take you through briefly. The first was in terms of the Eden project. So the training they're offering is a variation on a Big Lunch Extra program. They hold that as a residential down in Cornwall. So they're delivering a version of that session, a one-day session, but they'll do that across the country. I think if there is an opportunity, if groups want to go to the residential in Eden, that they might be able to do that. But that might be a discussion between us and the RM in question if they've discussed that with their groups or with the group and CDF. In terms of COCO, the training they're delivering is a variation, or sort of boiled down version, if you like, of their community organising training. So they'll do a day session on that, and the residential will be a version of the residentials they run for their community organisers, so a chance to get more skills in community organising. In terms of the plan, as Tom said, although we've put a lot of data in those two slides, we're not expecting this to be an enormous document full of appendices. The essential essence of it is that communities are saying, we had these issues, we took it to the community, this was the result of those, this is how we're going forward. Some of this data came from guidance sent to us by DCLG, so we'll put that into a guidance document, we'll send that to the relationship managers. Okay, in terms of the reporting, probably as Jim was saying in the wider session earlier on, I think last year the relationship managers submitted a report every month, so we don't want to do that. What we thought was the best use of time would be if relationship managers submitted a report on each of their areas as they'd achieved one day's worth of work with them. So I think we're looking at maybe 4 reports covering the lifetime of one First Steps area. And with that report, they can attach an invoice for that day's work. So essentially every time they've met with one of those areas or done work that might not necessarily be a meeting, but maybe sort of offline work for them, but once they've achieved the day's work, they submit a report on it and submit the invoice. There were discussions in the meetings yesterday, in the face-to-face sessions, about how that should look and whether there's flexibility on the amounts being invoiced. The hope was that maybe it'd be one invoice and that'd be for one day, but there were discussions yesterday, so if anything comes back on that, we will report back to you. It's an online system, and as Gareth mentioned earlier, the reports are sent out by email with a link to a form to go into. Again, there's notional deadlines when we thought people want to submit those in line with the sort of timescales I gave you earlier, meeting them before the summer holidays, before the blog. But what we'll do is make sure those reports are open for about 2 months, so you have quite a lot of time to submit each of those, which should fit the windows of most people. As I say, there may be some availability issues, but I think, and we'll look at that by exception, but I think 2 months windows for each of those reports should be sufficient. I said, see an example of a report on the handout, so this isn't how the form will look electronically. Sorry, I need to... the wrong one. But this is how it looks in Word, just to give you an idea of the questions. So the relationship manager, the area, if it was a meeting, the number of meetings. If it wasn't a meeting, because these are text boxes, you still be able to clarify that maybe you've done work offline. So although I've listed it as meetings, you can put the information if it was offline work. Progress, spend to date, and any issues arising and any actions. So this is the same report that will be required for each of those sort of days worth of work, if you like. So hopefully a lot less work than reported monthly, and as I say, only required at the point at which you claim in your next invoice. As I say, if anything comes from the discussions yesterday and any questions that you might have about the invoicing, we will get back to you, because as I say, it was raised by some of the groups yesterday. So hopefully that was a little bit more information for you in terms of first steps. This is the team. There's 4 people. There's myself and Tom are here today. There's Alice and Chris. You may have had conversations with Chris or Tom or even myself already. Feel free to use those same channels. We also have a First Steps email address, which we can all access, and I'll include that on the slides before I send them out. But yeah, any of us, probably Alice is probably the least available because she's in and out of meetings, and as the director she's called upon to do other stuff. So myself, Chris and Tom are probably, and myself and Tom especially, are in 5 days a week. So if there's any particular queries, do drop us a line. Hopefully we've still got a bit of time left. So Gareth, if there's any questions about First Steps.
Yeah, there's one question, there's a few questions actually. It's about the events. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, perfect. Yeah.
Yeah. If areas can't travel to a regional event, could they be done via a webinar?
Good question. I suppose that will have to come out of the induction meetings when we have that with the areas. It's not necessarily something we've planned. Initially, as I say, we're looking to hold them in each region. And what we were looking to do is, if they, for whatever reason, can't attend their local region, we'll try and run it in the next region on different days so they have an opportunity to go there. We're producing central materials, so there's certainly the materials from the training could be supplied to. And yeah, maybe we could explore doing it on a webinar with them as well.
One thing I'd just add to that is...
specifically...
Sorry, Gareth.
No, carry on.
One thing I'd just like to add is that as part of the training offer, alongside that, we're also developing a number of online-based training products that will also work in tandem with the face-to-face events, which the groups will be able to access. We'll send out more information about that probably next week, as they're currently in development.
Great. And there's a question about the community action plan with respect to the length and detail of it, and what's your expectations?
We're not expecting it to be long. We had a discussion yesterday with DCLG. People don't like necessarily providing templates, because then people follow the template and obviously you don't necessarily get that creativity, but it's not expected to be a long document by any means. I think the point I mentioned before about setting out what you were looking to achieve from the consultation, what were the results, and how you're taking that forward is essentially it. I think, I can't remember in the discussion yesterday, I think DCLG will think about it if there is any minimum or maximum, but we don't want it to be too long a document. And the other discussion is about the context of the plan and who it's intended for. It shouldn't be just, this is the homework we have to do on the programme. Hopefully it's got wider use. Now, for example, one of the areas who've put in a bid have a number of areas they want to address as a local community partnership. And they've brought them to the table as part of their neighbourhood group, but they don't know which ones they want the community to prioritise. So their idea with their plan is that they ask the community which are the priorities for them to address. So in that particular context, the plan really has to be written to explain to the local community. And obviously, maybe if it's something they want to submit to the local councils, there may be a bit more of a formal document. But I think there's also the context of who their plan is being written for and the issue they're looking to address.
Okay, thank you. And a couple of final questions. Who's delivering the CD training?
So as part of the recruitment for the relationship managers, I think Tom had sent out the stuff and he sent the information out. I think they were asked people if they were interested in delivering the training. So we have expressions of interest from some of the relationship managers already. Who delivers it possibly would depend on what regions, what the final decision is on where the projects are selected for. We will need people to deliver because we've created the content centrally. The same training can be delivered by different people. And again, we'd look to be as equitable with the spread as we can. We want to give all the relationship managers that we've sort of signed up so far, which is about 38, we want to give them all relationship manager work, and obviously, but we can also use the training to make sure, that we top up some people if needs be.
And the final question then, relating to relationship managers, will there be delay in appointing RM should you extend the closing date for application?
I suppose it could have a knock-on effect. As I say, with First Steps, we're working with groups who've already expressed an interest, if you like, and they just need to submit the form. So if we can get to our 115 areas sooner rather than later, that would be great for all concerned.
And I think that is... Oh, right, okay, just one more question then. Are groups expected to pay for travel to the training events out of their grant?
No, I think we do have a budget for expenses for the groups to attend the training. As I say, we'll try and keep it within the region so that amount would be mitigated anyway. But yes, I think they could, because the other First Steps, I need to make that point as well. With First Steps, as opposed to our place, we don't imagine that everybody who's working in an area is necessarily a paid employee of an organisation. They could be volunteers, local residents and the like. So that's why we committed to put the training into the local areas. One of the things we'll do with the induction events and the training also is look to do them at times that are convenient. With the induction events, we're looking to hold them roughly between 5 and 8 o'clock in the evenings, or potentially in one case at a weekend. When we hold the induction events, we'll also try and get a feel from the groups what time of day or what day of the week they want their training sessions to run to. And again, it may be weekends or maybe evenings.
One question that came up yesterday actually was how many people can attend the training event from each group. So it'll be up to 3 people.
Which goes back to spreading the load amongst First Steps areas and obviously a group of committed people within each area.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, I think that's probably as much time as we have now.
Yeah,
so I'd like
just finish off if that's all right.
Yeah,
sorry. It was apologies for the lugubrious nature of my voice. It is quite an exciting programme, and we're looking forward to being on it. In terms of when we met yesterday in the event, a lot of the people were excited. The relationship managers were excited because they can work with small groups who are just starting out on the route, and especially if it's in the local area for those relationship managers. So they were very excited about that they can help shape people on the start of this route, as opposed to people who are nearly there and just need a little bit of help. So hopefully that'll be the same for you guys. It will be exciting to work with these groups and start them out on their journeys.
Okay, thank you. So thank you, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this webinar today. We do hold regular webinars. Keep an eye out. We'll send some information around of any that are relevant to the program you're involved with. And enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Gareth.
Tom, Ian, could you make me the presenter now, please? Thank you. Thanks. So, Tom and Ian, you can log off now if you wish.
Thanks for all your help, Gareth.
No worries, thank you.
Bye.
Bye.